Alrighty, well, we are live once again this very morning going over Hurricane Laura. So we're going to let some people come in and we'll shortly begin our discussion on Hurricane Laura. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So we got a lot to talk about this morning with Hurricane Laura. A couple of very important developments have occurred this morning regarding Hurricane Laura. So first of all, the maximum sustained winds were up to 65 knots or 75 miles per hour. My first day was actually really good. I had first day of college and first day of work yesterday, so I kind of got doubled on those. And then I have work again today. I'm basically working 5 days a week. So, not bad though. Not bad. Not a bad schedule though. But basically, right now we've had a substantial increase in the winds with Hurricane Laura, and pressure down to about 991 millibars, and it's moving northwest here at about 17 miles per hour. This is a little bit of a concern because right now it's moving actually a little bit further west than actually once thought. And that's going to be a problem kind of going forward for what impacts it's going to bring to portions of the Louisiana and Texas coastlines. Take a look here at the visible satellite imagery from tropicaltidbits.com, by the way. You can see a couple of very interesting things. Is it still trending west? Yeah, it's still trending west a little bit. And this is one of the more concerning factors, is that now this puts more of Texas in play than first thought. And real quickly, if we kind of look at that, let me back it up. Let me take a drink of water real quick. So if we kind of take a look at this, where this is kind of expected to come in right around the Texas-Louisiana border, we have hurricane watches that are in effect for almost all of, basically all of central and western Louisiana. And then for eastern Texas, from about Galveston up towards the Texas-Louisiana border, we have hurricane watches and then tropical storm watches for portions of central and eastern Louisiana. That does not include New Orleans. But this is going to be a fairly significant event. The Hurricane Center does expect this will become a major hurricane upon landfall. Someone on Twitter said it was about 986, but I forgot who it was. 986. I can look up to that. Let me look. The reconnaissance aircraft might have found something in the time that I was doing both updates. So I'm going to take a look at what's going on. 986. This recon mission does not seem to be updating, so that's wonderful. Looks like the pressures were about 990 from the NOAA recon plane. I saw a new cone that went from Corpus Christi and Port Arthur. Yeah, so and that's kind of what we're seeing is this is going to be something that probably not all the way from Corpus Christi, which is down here. Not really. So, I mean, while there's always an inherent risk for Corpus Christi and surrounding vicinity, to see it just kind of go in this way without turning is probably not going to happen. So it's probably going to be, if anything, coming up something like that, maybe towards Galveston or kind of on this forecast path like that. The eastern solution is looking less likely, but this right front quadrant is going to be the biggest problem. And I just posted a video update regarding this, storm. And again, this right front quadrant is kind of still smashing into portions of western Cuba. And this eastern side still producing some heavy rain and flooding over Cuba. But you can clearly see that's a pretty well-defined core at the moment. But it's not quite there yet. It will need to do a little bit of work. And if we can we'll show the microwave imagery here in a moment. But again, that's the NOAA reconnaissance aircraft. They found pressures of about 990 to 989 millibars. And also, they did find that flight level winds of about 65 knots. So they did not find any surface winds of hurricane force, but the Air Force reconnaissance aircraft did. and they're not updating, so that's a little bit of a problem, but 65 knots here about. So the curious thing with Laura is that the winds are not reflected as in Eyewall forms. The strongest winds are far away from the center. Yeah, and that's what, you know, is kind of hindering. The good news is right now that because the radius of maximum winds are actually well removed from the inner core structure, it's not going to be able to rapidly intensify as much. And I'm going to see if we can kind of get the 850 gigahertz. No, of course, there we go. I bet you this one's going to say the same thing, or maybe it's going to load. But there we go. So this is from earlier this morning, but the general idea kind of is much of the same here. That we have this broad inner core structure here. We'll highlight that in a different color. I mean, this is from earlier this morning at about 9 Zulu. Laura could probably get to be about, you know, a Category 3 hurricane, maybe upper end Category 3, maybe low end Category 4. Can you do a small part on Storm Francis in the UK? I can, yes. I would have to look for it because I'm not very familiar. I'll be very honest with you. I'm not very familiar with United Kingdom weather. And, you know, I mainly focus on the tropics, but if I could kind of get a little bit of time going over everything, yeah, I'll certainly kind of take a dive into it. But you can see the microwave imagery that is coming from Laura again. This is earlier this morning, but you can almost tell that there's almost a fully closed eyewall here from this morning, and it's still open here on the north side, but this is fairly interesting. The NOAA plane had strongest winds in the curve band southeast of the center. Yeah, and we'll kind of jump back to the NOAA plane here. There we go. So the NOAA plane, you can kind of see how it came in, you know, found basically what Air Force reconnaissance had of tropical storm or hurricane force winds here. This band towards the southeast was a little bit weaker, but still found some fairly strong winds up in this area, and then found some other strong winds on the north side. So there is some hurricane force flight level winds on the north side. We can see the south and western side is fairly anemic right now, so that's not going to be much of a problem, at least right now on the western side. And like I said, this is what's going to need to happen, is that we're going to need to see more of a gradient happen before more of, like, we need to see a pressure gradient, a more significant pressure and wind gradient before we can get rapid intensification. And we cannot get rapid intensification either without a closed concentric eye wall. And if we kind of switch to one of the other degrees seeking, or the 850 megahertz thing, of course it doesn't want to load, so we're just going to try other ones until they end up loading. Sometimes you don't get these sites to load properly, and other times it's just really slow and it's kind of annoying. But the NOAA plane did find that these were very strong winds, but nothing that much on the western side of it. And that's in part because some of that northerly shear that's still kind of occurring across the storm. This is a updated one from earlier. And I'm just going to load the image in another tab. There we go. So this is another update from about 8 o'clock. So this is only about 2 hours old. And you can almost see that we have a almost closed eye wall here. Not quite, though. And this is a little bit lower in the atmosphere, but it's not quite in a closed eye wall, but it's almost there. And I'm going to move to one of the other ones, but that's almost a closed eye wall. And once this really starts to occur, you'll start to get more of a significant intensification as this moves towards the west-northwest. Again, it's kind of moving something like that. So this is going to spout a little bit of intensification as time goes on. And until we get a closed eye wall, though, we're not going to have a fairly significant, robust period of intensification. The general movement of the center is back west-northwest after a western jog it did. Yeah, it took a little bit of a westerly jog yesterday and a bit this morning too, I believe. But, you know, it was something that we're going to have to watch. Now, the storm is a little bit tilted That's one thing for sure. There is a little bit of northerly shear, and that is in part due to the process that we actually have at the surface, west-northwesterly winds here at the surface, but in the mid-levels, you have more of an easterly flow here. So if you kind of take that motion of a west-northwest flow at the surface, and you take kind of an easterly flow at the mid-levels, you're kind of left with, if you take the differential of them, you're kind of left with some northerly shear. So that's very important to understand, that there is still some northerly shear that's impacting it, kind of hampering a significant inner core formation at the moment. The overall shape is like Katrina, which was a little asymmetric after it came off Florida. Not saying this will be Katrina, but just analyzing. Yeah. It has my attention, and for what it's worth, the Hurricane Center did not forecast this to become a hurricane until tomorrow. And, I woke up and this thing was already a hurricane. So, and we're likely not going to see, this, 185 Cat 5 like Dorian or Katrina. But the bottom line is that, if you live, where the core is going to be making landfall and on this right front quadrant, for sake, all the way over to New Orleans and Gulfport and Biloxi are going to feel impacts from this. And, while it may not be a Category 5 there, or, whether it may not be as significant as impacts as it is going to be near where the center makes landfall and directly to the east of it, there will be some significant impacts that are going to occur even well removed from this center. And that's very important. We can kind of take a look at that here, on the H-Wharf, which will let load for us here. The H-Wharf is one of our better models, specifically for forecasting tropical cyclones. And you can see here, this is the overall radar. This is the 06Z run from earlier this morning. The 06Z run had about pressures of 988 millibars, which this is pretty in line with what we've got. And the storm continues to intensify, and by early tomorrow, it is about 963. By the time, about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's 963 millibars. And then it slams. And you can kind of see, not only focusing on the center, but well removed from the center, there's going to be large impacts well away. And that storm surge is going to be a big problem. You can see these training bands will be pushing water in. This will be a fairly significant storm surge problem as well. Back looking at the mean sea level pressure, 989, what the NOAA plane got. Yeah, 989 is what the NOAA plane got. Now, the NOAA plane, they do have sometimes lower pressures than what Air Force reconnaissance does report. And I just want to see if the Air Force data did come in yet. Yes, they did. So the Air Force reconnaissance plane, it seems to be updating once again. But about 992, that's, not that far off. I would really like to see what this Eyewall looks like over here, but it's boring the amount of storms we got here in the UK. You know what? We might, you guys actually might get the remnants here of Hurricane Laura, because this is eventually going to come up, get caught up in an extratropical front, and then kind of move off into the North Atlantic here. So Laura's going to do something like that, and there actually might be impacts towards the Azores and the United Kingdom and Ireland as time progresses, because it's going to do something much like that here. So that will be something interesting, and I'm certainly curious to see how that affects your guys' weather here over the next couple of weeks. But you can really see that we're going to have a big problem with storm surge, and the storm surge maps here from the National Hurricane Center. We'll kind of look at this, peak storm surge. So this is what's concerning from Sabine, basically from Sabine Lake and Vermilion Bay, about 7 to 11 feet of storm surge, and all the way to Lake Bourne and Ocean Springs, about 3 to 5 feet of storm surge. This whole area is going to have storm surge across this area. And again, we talked about how, the core is not going to be anywhere near New Orleans, but yet there will be storm surge that is going to pile in because of that onshore flow. It's not like you have a hurricane kind of moving like that. You have a hurricane that's going to be moving up, that's going to pile this onshore flow. Now, you don't have a hurricane coming straight north, which would pile more of it, so that's good news, but that's a big problem, and 7 to 11 feet of storm surge obviously has a fairly significant potential there. The H-Wharf really has initialized lower correctly with similar current pressures and also showing an asymmetric pattern in the convection, which is currently happening. Yeah, and you know that's why I like the H-Wharf, because it can usually verify pretty well, and you know that is a scary picture, you know, right there. The recent European ensembles is unanimous for a Texas landfall, and you know what? It's very possible that that could happen. And you know what I expect to see is in the 11 o'clock advisory package, we're going to get a shift further west. I believe that at the 11 o'clock advisory, we'll likely see a shift further off towards the west. Because, and if we even look here at the spaghetti plots here, you'll notice that these spaghetti plots are basically right on the Texas-Louisiana border. So, but this does not necessarily, you know, and one thing I want to point out is because these spaghetti plots are very close together, this does not necessarily imply very high confidence. There's actually a range of possibilities from West Texas or from East Texas all the way through central Louisiana for the landfall point. I just want to make that very clear. But this seems to suggest Texas-Louisiana border, but it could be, you know, further west. And the European ensembles have suggested that this could be further west into West Texas, and that is a very real possibility. That's also why we have hurricane watches to near Galveston, Texas, at the current moment. The new microwave pass over lure appears to show a low-level eye feature. Yes, indeed, it does, and that is from about 9Z this morning. That's 12 Zulu time today, so that's about 8 o'clock. And that right there is a pretty well-established low-level eye feature, but it's not a fully closed low at the fully closed eyewall at the moment, which is going to prevent rapid intensification at the current moment, but this will likely induce some intensification as it moves west-northwest. And that's going to be one of the biggest factors kind of going forward with that. So, again, if you guys have any questions, you know, for anybody who's new to the channel, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, or, you know, in general, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, you know, put your thoughts, you know, in terms of what's going to happen. I like to hear from everybody. But this suggests that this, you know, could eventually kind of wrap up into a closed eyewall. And once that happens, then we're really going to see some significant intensification as it moves west-northwest. And that's what the Hurricane Center thinks as well. And again, that visible imagery shot is pretty telling. The general uncertainty in the track has been impressive. Yeah, tell me about it. You know, it's been impressive, the general uncertainty, but it's also been giving a little bit of a headache, not going to lie. But you can also notice here in the recent visible satellite imagery, this is the 1 minute satellite loop here. You had 70-mile-an-hour winds where I live on the border of Wales and England. Very strange for this time of the year. I wonder if it's maybe because of either an extratropical, because it probably wasn't anything to do with a tropical system, but that's crazy. 70-mile-an-hour winds, that's almost like borderline hurricane right there. From eastern Louisiana to Texas-Louisiana border landfall. Yeah, you know, and I'm starting to kind of lessen the eastern Louisiana solution for a landfall, but this area is still going to get rocked, and I mean rocked with storm surge and heavy rain all the way out to near New Orleans and even Gulfport and Biloxi. It's still going to get nailed with some heavy rain and storm surge for that region, and that's why I'm very concerned about this region for storm surge and this region for storm surge as well. On its current path, the western side isn't going to be terrible, but still going to bring hurricane force winds potentially all the way even to near Galveston, Texas at the moment. One thing you notice on the 1 minute visible satellite imagery is we have new convection firing on the southwestern side, and eventually that's going to rotate its way in. And that might be all we need for a closed eyewall at that point. And that's when we're likely to see significant intensification. This is going to try to wrap itself all the way around and probably end up to more significant intensification in through here. And I certainly would not be surprised if we see that happen at all. So we're also just kind of waiting here for the 11 o'clock advisory as well. So from Storm Francis, that's hitting us at the moment. Yeah, no, I was talking about, like, I wonder if Storm Francis kind of originated from something in the tropics here in the Atlantic or just extratropical processes. Do you think the 11 a.m. Update will have big changes? Probably. Probably some changes to the track. Probably for the track, and I would beg to venture that there might be an increase in the sustained winds at the landfall point, is what I'm kind of saying or thinking there. There should be a hurricane warning with the 11 o'clock advisory. Yes, there definitely probably will be a hurricane warning for the 11 o'clock advisory. Thanks for all the updates, Mike. Not sure what we'd do and what we'd get without yourself, Levi, and definitely Mark. Yeah, and thank you very much to kind of put me in that boat. It's very humbling, that's for sure. How will forward speed affect the track of the storm? So forward speed itself isn't necessarily going to be affecting the storm motion or the storm track at much at all. But what it does is it is going to allow there not to be a significant break in the ridge, that it just turns straight north. And basically with this forward motion of about 21 miles per hour, that's also with what cool eddy it's going to go over in terms of the upper ocean heat content out here. There's a little bit of a cooler eddy in here, and it's kind of moving perpendicular to that and moving fast enough that it should not be able to significantly hinder intensification. So not so much for the track, but this will basically affect the intensity over time. I think it will hit as a Category 3. Yeah, I mean, and that's what the Hurricane Center thinks right now too. And, it's kind of what I was kind of in line with, is that this will likely end up making landfall somewhere around a Category 3 hurricane, maybe even a Category 4 if this manages to rapidly intensify significantly. In the True Color satellite to 2 kilometer, you can see the outline of the mid-level high pressure west of Florida. Flow generally turns from an eastward direction to basically southeast-south direction. Yeah. And you know what? We'll take a look at that since you brought that up. We'll kind of give that a look. Let's see. Hurricane Laura True Color. We'll take it some time to load here, but for what it's worth too, the intensity guidance here with Laura basically has us going all the way up. And there's a few models that still peak it out where it is, but these are kind of the outliers. This is likely going to be a major hurricane. So for what it's worth. Excuse me. So we'll kind of let this load here, and then we'll kind of discuss a couple of very important things. So you can clearly see that you can definitely see the outline of the ridge here. That's a fairly significant outline of the ridge where it's kind of streaming in. One of the things that this is also doing is that this is helping to kind of lessen the impacts for Florida. Yesterday down in Key West, while I was working, there was like a 70 mile per hour wind gust that was reported. So, that's very important. Give me 1 second, folks. I'm just going to reply to something real quick, and I'll be kind of right back. So just give me 1 second. So, one of the primary things is that this is going to have a lot of consequences downstream. And again, you can clearly see how well it looks right now on the visible satellite imagery with new deep convection firing on the southwest quadrant. And that's going to wrap itself over, and that will likely close off the eyewall later today. Now, the forward motion could be one hindrance, maybe, especially if this does encounter any hiccups on its way through the Gulf of Mexico. The longer that it takes to basically close off an eyewall, the weaker it is right now for Texas and Louisiana. So that's good news, but the fact is that this was not expected to be a hurricane until tomorrow, and it's already a hurricane now. So, that's kind of mildly concerning, but the outline of the ridge is very evident here on the satellite imagery on the true color. You can basically see where the outline of the ridge is here, basically that outline with the flows coming here. And also helping to induce some of the this northerly shear, because you have some northwest winds here, west-northwest winds here, but in the mid-levels you have more of an easterly component of the wind. So if you draw a shear vector, that's basically almost due out of the north. If you basically subtract it, take the shear vector motion, basically physics here in action. But this is going to be a very significant problem for Texas and Louisiana. And one of the things we're going to take a look at here is some of the model runs, and then we're going to basically kind of chill out and wait for the 11 o'clock advisory, and then go over that and probably hop on off so I can eat lunch and get ready for work. But let's take a look here at the UK Met model. And this has been one of the more consistent models today, kind of one of the ones that has been forecasting the storm fairly well over the last couple of days. And this is the 0Z run here of the UK Met. And you can see clearly fairly significant hurricane 951 upon landfall here somewhere along the Texas-Louisiana border. Fairly significant hurricane that as it's approaching, you can also notice what it's going to do with the storm surge values. It's going to pile up all the storm surge in this region, and that is going to be a big storm surge maker for portions of Louisiana and Texas if it makes it that far west. So that's going to be a very big problem going forward. So, this is going to be one of the main problems, and, the H-Wharf has been doing very well, and, this is 943 on the H-Wharf, approaching the Texas-Louisiana border, which, for reference, that's the Texas-Louisiana border right there. New vortex data shows estimated winds about 87. Whoa, 87. Go to the Recon page. Was that from NOAA, or was that from NOAA or the Air Force for the vortex data message? Because 87, and if that was surface winds, oof. 87 surface winds, that would be... Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, I quite honestly, if that's surface winds, I didn't expect that. You know what, actually, I can kind of take a look at that myself. What elevation? Yeah. So I'm going to look at that here on the Tropical Atlantic Live Recon page, because that is going to be able to help indicate what we've got here. So let's see. Multiple missions, and I'm going to NOAA and Air Force. Okay, so here's some of the vortex data messages here. So let's see what we got. Maximum flight level wind outbound was about 79 miles per hour. Here it is. Yeah, and no, it was correct. Yeah. Estimated by surface, the SFMR, maximum surface wind inbound 76 knots or 87 miles per hour. That is at the surface. That's not flight level winds. That's surface winds. It's a little concerning. That's surface winds there. That was the NOAA vortex data message. And let's see. It has, let's look at the eye structure. Yeah, maximum flight level winds 69 knots or 79 miles per hour from the 52 nautical miles from the flight center. The fixed accuracy was 0.01 nautical miles with a meteorological accuracy of 1 nautical mile. The fix was determined by wind, pressure, and temperature. Let's see if they have an eye structure. Okay, so they do not have an eye structure, which means that the eye structure was not determined at that pass from the vortex data message. So either the people from the Recon did not visually sample a closed eyewall or a semi-open eyewall. It kind of might be a blend of the both right now. The other vortex data message didn't from the Air Force either, so probably is not applicable at this time. Sounds like a Category 3, maybe an underestimate. Yeah, almost. I mean, if you're getting 87 mile per hour surface winds, yeah, that's a big problem. But this is trying to ramp up pretty quickly in the Gulf, and we talked about how this very warm water was going to start playing a fairly big factor into what's going to happen downstream. And I hate how this has to buffer so much, but I guess it's kind of the bandwidth. And sometimes I don't have the best bandwidth, so just kind of bear with me as my chair squeaks a lot. It's always nice. I need some WD-40. So there we go. And you can clearly see that we are getting fairly significant cold cloud tops that are wrapping around and rotating inwards. What this is going to do is this is going to help to lower the pressures by surface flux processes, and that is eventually going to help induce a closed eyewall. Once we get a closed eyewall, we'll get more robust strengthening as time goes on. So I'm just typing something real quick here. But yeah, that's you know, the thing is that, you know, that's fairly significant. Now, there is still a little bit of a tilted vortex structure, and we can kind of see that here on the Recon, and we'll kind of jump back to where that is here. Recon. So if we go to the NOAA Recon plane, this is actually the flight level. This is basically the low-level center. This is the mid-level center. So you can see there is still a little bit of a vortex tilting going on here, and that correlates with a flight level wind drop as well. So there is still some vortex tilting, which means the low-level and mid-level centers are not quite aligned yet. Was 87 miles per hour expected on the surface this early? No, to be quite honest. Is there something that can kill the storm? Well, not really. All conditions seem to be fairly favorable at the current moment for additional intensification. Good morning there. Good morning. Yes, I can. I'll probably take a look at that, if you don't mind, after the 11 o'clock advisory. Right now, I'm going to focus basically for the next half hour. I'm going to focus here on Laura, and then after the 11 o'clock advisory, and we go over everything there, I'll take a look at the UK quick, and then I'm going to go ahead and jump off and start getting ready for work. Good morning. Good morning. So one of the main things that we're seeing right now that would prohibit significant intensification, at least in the short term, is that you see here where the mean sea level pressures are about 990 millibars here. And then that's the low level center. This is the mid-level center. You can kind of see one of those little almost pressure drops, and I'm going to highlight that in a little bit more of a, we'll kind of zoom in here. That's the low-level center of circulation here. This is the mid-level center of circulation here. And you can see the flight level wind drop associated with the low-level center and the flight level wind drop with the mid-level center. This suggests that the centers are still offset from each other, and they're not vertically stacked. And what I mean by vertically stacked is they're not right on top of each other, and they're still separated by a little bit of a margin. And until we get these things to completely vertically align and the eye wall to completely close off, we will not see significant rapid intensification. But gradual to quick intensification is still expected, but we will not see rapid intensification until those two things that I just mentioned do occur. So we'll kind of have to wait and see when that does occur, because the earlier that happens, the stronger storm it ends up being. But again, the general kind of consensus is that this is going to make landfall all the way here to portion, basically eastern and central Louisiana, all the way through western Texas. But that right front quadrant is going to be the big problem here. Once the eyewall closes, the wind maximum should be closer to the center. Yes, it should be. That wind maximum should be a lot closer to the center at that point. So that's maybe one thing we're going to really have to watch for. And, that's a little bit concerning going forward, because the sooner it's able to do that, the quicker it's going to intensify down in this vicinity. Thank you for giving us your time in this morning. Of course. I'm always here to kind of give some feedback to everybody. So, always here to give some feedback and help people, understand what's going on. But, this is a little bit concerning. I'm certainly very sorry to hear that. And, may she rest in peace. Very sorry to hear that, man. But you can see here on the visible satellite imagery, this thing is getting ready to take off. And once it closes that eye wall, this is going to be a problem. And again, the maximum estimated surface winds inbound were 87 miles per hour. So this suggests that we probably have a fairly substantial tropical cyclone at the moment that is intensifying quickly into a powerful hurricane. Will this impeach Long Beach, Mississippi? So I'm going to be very broad here, because the bottom line is, we can't forecast specifically for specific cities and towns, because there is still some uncertainty regarding the eventual track. But Mississippi will have impacts. Basically, Mississippi, especially right along the coast, is going to have impacts from storm surge and heavy rain and gusty winds. So, yes, it will impact Long Beach, Mississippi. Why is there no hurricane warning if the storm is 2 days away? There will likely be hurricane warnings by today. Hurricane warnings are usually about 24 to 36 hours from hurricane conditions making impacts and landfall into those areas. So, tropical storm, with hurricane watches, they're issued about 48 hours, 36 to 48 hours. Hurricane warnings are issued about 24 to 36 hours, if I recall correctly. So that's why there's no hurricane warnings at the moment. But there probably will be at the 11 o'clock. Isn't there a lot of dry air? There is some, but not a lot. And you can kind of see that this inner core is fairly well sufficient and kind of sustained from any of this dry air that's kind of wrapping around. And we keep getting convection firing to the southwest and moving and wrapping around. So, and our center is roughly here. So there is some dry air to the north, but this also is because some of that northerly shear that is actually going to abate. So we're not going to have any issues with dry air. So there's not a lot of dry air, but there is some. The western side is getting a lot stronger. NOAA plane 40. Whoa. I'm going to take a look at that here in a moment. Just wanted to say thank you from Colorado. Your analysis and commentary is very insightful. Thank you very much. That's that is very nice of you to say, and I'm glad that you find this very useful. So yeah, that western side is a lot stronger now, and this was only about 25 to 30 knots here on the last pass through. Now we're seeing 45 knots or so, so definitely now tropical storm force winds on the west side. Do you think that the storm could become a Category 2 by the end of the day? It's certainly possible, and especially if we see a closed eyewall form later today, yes. What is the chances of this moving more towards the west? It is certainly a very real possibility that might be realized here soon, that this might actually move a little bit more due west. And that is because this ridge is actually a little bit stronger in through here than what we were thinking the other day. And some of the European ensembles continue to kind of show this kind of just moving almost due, something like that. It is possible that this does make landfall somewhere in Texas. So it is possible that this moves further west. Thank you from Austin, Texas. Hope you all stay safe down there. And of course, I'm always here to help people. It has much stronger rotation today than it did yesterday when I was here. Yeah, it's certainly it certainly did. What about tornadoes in Mississippi? Yes. Glad you bring that up, and I'm very glad that you are aware of the tornado threat from tropical cyclones. So often people don't know that tornadoes are a part of hurricanes in the far outer rain bands. But yes, this will provide, that's the volume button, I didn't want that. This, as it kind of comes up this way, it will, this right front quadrant is going to produce tornadoes on this right front quadrant. And to kind of be a closer up view here, you can see where this is going to make landfall. And this right front quadrant all in through here is going to be supportive of tornadoes. These, tropical tornadoes that form in the rain bands. So yes, there will be a tornado threat. Is it possible to reach Category 4 considering the hot water? Yes, and this has a very real possibility. If this closes off in Eyewall today, later today, this will probably be a Category 4 hurricane. Well, thank you very much. I kind of have a high-pitched voice, I think, so... But, it is going to be something we're going to have to watch. Just give me 1 second, folks. So, thank you so much. Very worried. No need to worry. Just kind of monitor everything. There's absolutely no need to worry right now regarding everything. Again, the worst impacts are going to be from Eastern Texas and through Western Louisiana, somewhere at the landfall point. And this will probably end up being something, again, this right front quadrant, though, is going to be something to kind of take note of as time goes on. So, good point. People pay way too much attention to the center. Yes, people do. And, this is what I try to hit home on every single time we get a tropical, storm or hurricane or whatever, is that, this right front quadrant is the worst impact, part of the storm. And even if that center doesn't come over you, it's going to provide a problem for the rest of this area. So, it is going to be a problem. Yeah, this is going to be a serious situation. So, I want to thank you for your hard work. I'm in the impact zone in Cameron, Louisiana. I hope you make it to 100K one day. You know what, man? Honestly, if I don't, so be it. Honestly, I just like being able to interact with everybody here and, give people kind of the knowledge that I know. Is there a lot of storm surge? Yes. Right now, the current expectation is about 7 to 11 feet of storm surge, and that's kind of what we on the experimental graphics. How high will the seas be in Mississippi? So this kind of gives a general idea of the storm surge maps. So about from Lake Bourne to Ocean Springs, about 3 to 5 feet here, and that goes into Mississippi. Lake Pontchartrain, about 2 to 4 feet. Sabine Lake, all the way through Vermilion Bay, about 7 to 11 feet. Galveston Bay is about 2 to 4 feet. So that's going to be very important. And near High Island, about 4 to 6 feet. And 4 to 6 feet from Morgan City through the mouth of the Mississippi. So that should give a general idea. Some meteorologists even predicted 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. Yeah, and to answer both questions real quick. So, will Laura eventually affect the United Kingdom after leaving the United States? Yes, it is possible. This is a fairly real possibility that this will go on to affect the United Kingdom, because it's going to get carried up and away in a upper level storm system and kind of turn out into the North Atlantic. So yes, it is possible. But let's see. How long will it take to the shear to abate? Probably by the end of today. Probably by the end of today or tomorrow. The sooner, though, the better for the... Well, the sooner, the more stronger it will get for the storm, but... let's see. A tad bit windy today, yeah. Only a tad windy. 70-mile-an-hour winds. Just a tad bit windy. Will Laura affect the Tampa Bay region? No. This will not bring any impacts to the Tampa Bay region. This is going to be a Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas problem. And then, obviously, further inland. But no direct effects to Tampa from Laura. Mark said last night he wouldn't be surprised if storm surge gets revised to 10 to 15 feet. Yes, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge is possible. What about wind gusts in Long Beach, Mississippi? So the bottom line here is, once again, the way that this is going to happen, and what you should do is, if you want very specifics for your particular location, go to NOAA.gov here, NOAA.gov, that would help, and you can kind of get your weather for your particular sites here. Actually, I think it's nationalweatherservice.gov, but you can just type in your local weather service office, and like for me, my weather service office here is Melbourne, and you can type in your zip code up here, and you can, type in your zip code and get direct information about your specific hometown. But in general, wind gusts probably, 50, 60 miles per hour could be easily expected in some of those rain bands. How does the forecast look for Houston? So for Houston, we'll go to the zoomed in shot here. So for Houston, there is a hurricane watch for near Galveston, and obviously Houston is right here. There is the possibility that this could end up actually trending a little bit further off towards the west, and we've seen that in some of the European ensembles this morning, and this would put more of Galveston and Houston in the direct landfall point here. But so far, this looks to be a problem for central and basically for western Louisiana and eastern Texas. Houston could get some impacts, but right now you are on the dry side. But there is a very real possibility that it could come further west and put more of Galveston and Houston in the worst impact zone. Is it possible for Hurricane Laura that it takes the most eastern or western part of the cone? Well, that's why the cone is there, and there is always an inherent possibility, because 1/3 of the time, statistically, the storm will move outside of the cone 1/3 of the time, and 2/3 of the time the storm stays in the cone. So for every 1/3 of the time that a cone is basically issued, the storm will deviate outside of it. So yes, it could take either side, but if it had to take a side, it would probably be the far western side, if that would be my guess. Forecast right now, 70-mile-an-hour winds on the Welsh border. Oof. Michael, have you ever flown in one of those Hurricane Hunter aircraft? So I haven't, but I would really like to. And I actually have talked to some of the both the NOAA and the Air Force reconnaissance personnel. And they've kind of talked to me about some of the stuff that they do, and yes, I would really like to fly into the hurricanes at one point. Do you think the cone for the new update will move more west? If anything, it's going to move more west. If anything, this is probably going to include more of Houston and Galveston, if that would have to be my guess. The 11 o'clock advisory is right in the corner. Yes, it is, and it should be here in just a moment. So and for what it's worth, this isn't the only thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on over the next few days. We are going to have to watch for another tropical wave coming off of Africa, And, those two look to be in a very favorable environment, and those two could go on to be tropical cyclones. So it's just something we're going to have to watch carefully. Let's see. So we're going to start looking, we're going to start looking for the 11 o'clock advisory. By the way, for Marco, it became a remnant low, so no real threats to Marco, except for some heavy rain along the Gulf Coast. Already hurricane now. I know it sounds crazy, but do you think this becoming a major hurricane already by tonight? Becoming a major hurricane by tonight, I would have to say probably not. But this could easily become a Category 2 by today and tonight. Probably not a major hurricane, but I would not be completely shocked. So, it wouldn't be completely shocking to see that. Why does the National Hurricane Center only say 8 and 2 p.m. advisories? So basically the way the National Hurricane Center works is basically how the advisory packages work is that you get intermittent advisories, which is basically an update to the location, the movement, the minimum pressure, and the winds at 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m., and 2 a.m., and then in between those times at 11 a.m., at 5 p.m., 11 p.m., and 5 a.m., you get the other cones. You get the new cone that comes out. You got, the new forecast discussion that comes out, and etc. So that's the way that it kind of works. At Category 5, not really thinking Category 5 right now. Again, and I'm just going to point this out. It is kind of rare to get Category 5s in the Atlantic, although we've had a lot in the past couple of years. But, we'll see. It's not impossible, but I wouldn't say it's incredibly likely at the current moment. So, the funniest thing is the nicknames Kermit and Miss Piggy. Yeah, and I actually kind of watched a discussion or a video on like how it got named, and it was basically from one of the Recon being called a pigsty, and then it just kind of took off from there. So that was kind of interesting, I thought. No problem. 8 and 2 are the intermittent advisories. No discussion with the 8. Yep. So 8 and 2 are the intermittent advisories. They basically just go over the additional movement. They do talk about the forecast, or the public advisory, but the forecast discussion you can see here is 4 a.m. Central Daylight or 5 o'clock a.m. Eastern. So let's see. Still no update for the 5 o'clock, or for the 11 a.m., sorry. Not saying what will happen, but the ingredients are there. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, anything is possible in the tropics, and you never say never for what it's worth. For what it do be worth, you never say never. So, do you think Laura can still move west towards the Houston, Galveston area? Yes. And, that is one of the reasons why, there is a hurricane watch to near Galveston for the possibility that this tries to sneak in a little bit further due west. And it is certainly possible, as shown by some of the European ensembles. I'm sorry I couldn't make it last night. No, that's no problem. I actually didn't do a live video update last night. I was just so tired when I came home from work. I was like, I'll do it in the morning. I think the storm will be 105 miles per hour before the end of the day. It's certainly possible. If global warming gets worse and temperatures keep rising, will Category 5s become more frequent in the future? And I have to refer to what I said, the other night. I am not a climate expert, and I'm certainly not no meteorological expert either. But, the amount of global warming and how it affects hurricanes is still rather unknown at this current point. But assuming these water temperatures do get warmer, and the ingredients start becoming more favorable, yes, it is possible. If you could send a Category 5 to which state, which one would be? You have to pick one. Have to pick one? Because I wouldn't wish for a Category 5 anywhere. It would be I mean, if anything, it would be where where Hannah came in with very little population centers. Because I don't want any hurricane to hit land, to be quite honest. And the NOAA plane got 68 surface wind reading, but that was involved in high rain rates. I cannot speak this morning. Yeah, so I'm going to take a look at Recon once again. Recon, there it is. Oh yeah, they did. They found a lot. So they found about 75 knots of that, but they did find there was several unflagged, about 65 knots to near 70 knots of the SFMR. So this suggests that we are seeing an intensifying hurricane. So that's going to be a problem. Let's see, did the 11 o'clock discussion come out? No, not yet. It's patiently awaiting for the 11 o'clock advisory. So, we're going to go over everything with the 11 o'clock advisory, and we're going to kind of talk about everything with that. Quickly touch on Storm Francis in the United Kingdom, and then I'm going to hop off and start getting ready for work. So, Rita was devastating. Also went to a populated area, weakened down to a Category 3 before approaching land. And you know what? And many people think that Katrina was a Category 5 upon landfall. And even I thought that for the longest time until I started doing research. Katrina was a Category 3 at landfall. And that kind of just, you notice how the storm surge was catastrophic. It was just catastrophic everywhere. Katrina was only Category 3, and that's why I said you don't need a Category 5 to make, the worst impacts, We saw that with Tropical Storm Imelda in Texas last year, or in 2018, whichever year it was. I think it was 2018, but it might have been last year. But, these storms, they ramp up pretty quick. I thought the exact same thing about Katrina until I saw the documentary. Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I thought it was a Category 5, right? And because I just heard it was a Category 5, and I thought, okay, I assume it's a Category 5 upon landfall. Let's try not to get political. Let's try not to bring up politics if possible. But I thought a lot of the same thing. Hello. I thought it was a Category 5 until I saw a documentary on it. So, excuse me. So the 11 o'clock advisory is coming out here in about a couple of moments. So we'll kind of stand by for that. Again, right now, my main concern is immediately along the Louisiana-Texas border and then on the eastern side on this right front quadrant. That's my biggest concern right now for Laura. So, still no update quite yet, but it will be very soon. Water is a lot more of a problem to deal with over... yeah, exactly. The water is a big problem because a lot of people die from storm surge. A lot of people die from storm surge than they do from the damaging winds. Yeah, exactly. Harvey, Katrina, Sandy, Florence. And this is why I strongly believe the Saffir-Simpson scale needs to be updated to include, to include rainfall and storm surge. Because, we've seen it time and time again that rain and storm surge is the #1 leading killer. Mike, are you going to do a live video tonight? Obviously, if your time permits. I realize you have other things that you need to do. Well, I'll probably be home from work at about 10 o'clock. Or I get off at 10, so I probably won't be home until about 10:30. So by the time, I do everything that I need to, it probably will be closer to 11. So, it will be something that, just kind of depends, but I'll try to, if I can. And if I'm not I certainly will. If I'm not working tomorrow, which I might be working all this week, but if I'm not working tomorrow, I certainly will do one tonight. So I'll just see what my schedule is when I go into work. Sandy was absolutely massive and just poured rain over a massive area. Yeah, exactly. Which areas along the coast were newly built seawalls, if any? I think it was most of the area, if I'm not mistaken. You work 12 hours. I'm working 7 hours because I go in from 3 to 10 tonight. So 3 to 10. So, and my store's open 24 hours. So, but I'm working 3 to 10. So at least I'm not like necessarily working midnight shift or the graveyard shift, basically. Katrina had us out of school for at least a month. Wow, that's impressive. The Euro ensemble is very consistent. Yeah, the European ensembles have been fairly consistent with where it's going to make landfall. Michael, what is the possibility of Laura doing an Eyewall replacement cycle? So, great question. So, the thing is that the quicker that Laura intensifies and gets organized now, the greater the chance that Laura will undergo an Eyewall replacement cycle before landfall and thus weaken it a little bit. So, let's see. Dorian, if we look at rain and storm surge and wind all at once, it's like category 6 height. I still think it was probably one of the scariest things to have lived through on Earth and by the Bahamas. Exactly. Is the Yucatan Peninsula getting major impacts? No. They're getting some rain, but no major impacts. Nope. The center of the storm's well removed, so no significant impacts to the Yucatan. But yeah, Dorian was one of those situations that everyone kind of wrote it off, but I can't imagine 180 parked in you, like, exactly. You get, I can't imagine even going through 150 mile an hour winds, let alone 180. Pressure of about 990 and 75. Let's see. Yep, so here it is. So 990, 75 miles per hour. This is the big changes. So here we go. Hurricane and storm surge warnings issued for the northwestern Gulf Coast. So here it is. The latest changes with the advisory. So pressure of about 990 millibars, winds of 75 miles per hour, so no changes. Winds here about 75 miles per hour, pressure of about 990. Storm surge warning in effect for the St. Louis Pass, Texas, to the mouth of the Mississippi River, including Port Arthur hurricane flood protection. Excuse me, I cannot talk this morning. Oh my God. Flood protection system. A hurricane warning is in effect from St. Louis Pass, Texas, to the intercoastal city, Louisiana. A tropical storm warning is in effect from Sargent, Texas, to the San Luis Pass, and from east of the intercoastal city to the mouth of the Mississippi River. Yeah, not quite fake. Not quite fake there. So, yeah, you can have a nice day, sir. I'm just gonna move that. You can have a nice day. Let's see here. So, a storm surge watch is in effect from Freeport, Texas, to the St. Louis Pass, and the tropical storm warning for the dry territories of Florida has been discontinued. Yeah, exactly. And the tropical storm warning has been discontinued for Cuba. So that is the newest advisory. Let's see. Significant strengthening is forecast during the next 36 hours, and Laura is expected to be a major hurricane at landfall. 11 a.m. advisory is in. So let's kind of see. We're going to wait for the forecast discussion to come out here. Thank you very much, Brad. That really means a lot to me. If Laura became a Category 5, it probably won't be. I had to be honest. You should make people moderators of the streams. Yeah, and you know what I'm going to do is I probably will. I'm going to probably make a couple of people I'm going to probably make a couple people moderators either today or tomorrow. So, because there's a lot of great people. I mean, of course, you're, in any stream, and it's in life too, you're going to have trolls and people like that. So, not really a big deal. Any chance Laura could slow down and gain more strength? Probably not. It's probably not going to slow down. The low-level flow is strong out of the west-northwest, and that's going to be helping to push it along. Plus, the trough is going to pick this thing up, carry it further towards the north, so probably not. Yeah, you certainly do, Brad. You certainly do. Yeah, but Maria had different conditions than Laura did. Yeah, it did. Not terribly different, but there were some differences that kind of. Awesome. Well, you know what? I'll thank you very much for that. I'll probably make you moderator and a couple of other people as well. Let's see. So the cone at the 10 o'clock intermittent. So for the 3-day cone, it did come a little bit further west, and this is your tropical storm and hurricane warning areas. How far east do you think the rain bands will reach? All the way over into Mississippi. All the way into Mississippi. Tropical storm warnings are in effect for portions of eastern Louisiana as well. Any chance of Laura hitting the Houston metro? If the European ensembles were to verify, that would. But right now, this is likely going to make landfall somewhere along the far western part of Louisiana into far eastern Texas and then carry northward. So there is a chance. Any chance of me being a moderator? Yes, I will definitely take it into consideration. And you will probably be moderator. I've been watching some other models coming off of Africa. Yep. It's that time. It's just the season, basically, for that. Let's see. Thoughts on it? Thoughts on the inland track. So the inland track is probably going to. It's still going to bring hurricane and tropical storm force conditions, especially closer to the coast. Eventually, this is going to move out over the open Atlantic. It will once again re-strengthen into a subtropical storm out here off the coast of Connecticut and Massachusetts and whatnot. So that's going to be something. Yeah, you will likely be a mod. I'll definitely probably make a lot of people moderator. I noticed a quick difference on the NOAA center passes. The wind maximum seems to be closer to the center. Yeah, that's definitely starting to happen. I want to see if the 11 o'clock discussion is out. It is not, so we're going to wait for that. If the high pressure over Florida moves further west, is it going to increase the chance that Laura curls back? J Gaming, yes, you probably will be. To answer your question, Julian, it probably won't happen. So, just the problem with that is that basically with that happening, it's probably not going to, because that ridge of high pressure is going to be eroded because of that trough and because of Laura. So it's probably going to erode it enough where that shouldn't happen. Never say never, though. Let's see here. So, there's a very real possibility that we're going to have to watch things. So, does this mean better news for Houston? No, it does not. Nope. This does not necessarily mean better news for Houston. And, again, Houston, if you go back here, is in that risk, to have tropical storm conditions over there. And there's a hurricane warning all the way through near Galveston, Texas. So that's going to be something. For people who live in hurricane areas, for people who live in hurricane areas, do you notice wildlife leaving in advance of a storm? I have seen that sometimes in advance of Hurricane Irma in 2017 here in Florida. Yeah, I kind of did notice that. That was kind of a very surreal moment. Very surreal. So, Peak storm surge. This is the 10 o'clock update, and you can see in the peak storm surge about 9 to 13 feet of storm surge from Sabine Lake through the Cataclusa Lake, I think that's how you say it. And from Lake Bourne all the way to Ocean Springs, about 3 to 5 feet. For the San Luis Pass, Port Bolivar, about basically 6 to 9 feet. Galveston Bay, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge. So there will be storm surge threats all the way into near Freeport, Texas. And remember, Freeport was devastated by Hurricane Harvey back in 2017. So 19 to 13, what am I saying? 9 to 13 feet of storm surge in the Sabine Lake area. 7 to 11 feet near Intercoastal City, Vermilion Bay, and Morgan City. 4 to 6 feet around the mouth of the Mississippi. And 3 to 5 feet near from about the mouth of the Mississippi through Lake Bourne and Ocean Springs. Do people have to evacuate? Yes, they do. For 9 to 13 foot storm surge, yes, you should evacuate. Because that is above normally dry ground. Above normally dry ground. The peak rainfall, excuse me, take a drink of water here. I will gladly help you out, Mike, in making these videos. Have been fairly interesting weather for almost 35. Should have done that as a career, but ended up being a... Yeah, I mean, you know, and hey, it's whatever you choose, man, you know, and if you certainly want to help me out, you can get in contact with me. Either go in the About Me section of my YouTube and look for my business email, and you can contact me there, or go on Twitter at Mike Romali1, and you can send me a tweet and direct message me from there. So we're going to read the discussion real quickly, and then I'm going to have to go get ready for work. So that is going to be that. So here's the discussion from the 10 o'clock. Satellite imagery shows that Laura's become a little bit better organized since it's crossed western Cuba, and now has a central dense overcast and some outer banding in the southern quadrant. Reports from aircraft basically suggested surface winds near 65 knots or 75 miles per hour. And the 700 millibar flight level as high as 77 knots and a central pressure of 990. Based on these initial intensities, Laura has been upgraded to a hurricane with an initial intensity of 65 knots. The initial motion is west-northwest at 290 degrees at 14 knots. This basically, the current forecast synoptic pattern should steer Laura west-northwest today, followed by a turn northwest tonight and a turn north on Wednesday. Basically, and turn north on that point. Oh yeah, no problem. You know, you can direct message me at any time. Follow me on Twitter first so I can follow you back, and then you can direct message me, or you can just shoot me a tweet and or contact my business email. So the new National Hurricane Center track before landfall has been nudged slightly further west, a little bit to the west, because of the previous response and the guidance. However, it still lies a little bit to the east of the consensus models at the time of landfall. The hurricane currently looks a little bit ragged with little to no outer convection outside of the central dense overcast of the southern quadrant banding. This may be due to the dry air in the vicinity, and some northern light shear conditions appear generally favorable. Basically, everything calls for that to be a major hurricane. The initial intensities of 115 knots for landfall. So that's going to be that. I live along the east coast of Florida in Port St. Lucie. I believe we got a break by storms from Marco. Got some wind shear. Totally wrong. Yeah, we caught a break from Isaias. We caught a break from this storm, because at one point it was expected to come right through Florida. So we did catch a break. So hopefully I don't die because I can't evacuate. You won't. As long as you know and have a hurricane preparedness plan ready, you board up your homes, you take all the precautions, you will not die. Okay, so I know this is going to be a little bit abrupt, but we're going to kind of cut off the stream right now because I'm going to go eat and then get ready for work and all that stuff. So, with that being said, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all did enjoy the stream. I will try to get another video update in later this afternoon, or probably like tonight at around 11 o'clock. But we'll see. Just depends when I get off work. All right. That being said, thank you all very much. And I will talk to you guys some more later. Of course, go follow me on Twitter at MikeRomali1 because I'll have updates all the way in through I still get working. So have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. I'll talk to you guys some more